Welcome to more movie plots. Spoilers ahead. One ordinary day, Florida teen Jake Portman is given a lift by his supervisor Shelley to his grandfather's house. Jake calls Abe on the way, but the old man suffers from dementia and sounds paranoid, claiming that he can't find the key to his guns in order to fight them. They make it to Abe's house at night and almost hit a man with white eyes standing in the middle of the road. Jake enters Abe's house to find it ransacked and tells Shelley, who goes to the car to get her .38. In the woods out back, Jake finds Abe's flashlight with blood on it, then spots Abe lying on the ground with a bloody fork, having got a few stabs in on whatever attacked him, but missing his eyes. Abe remains conscious long enough to warn Jake of something awful coming and that he should have told him sooner, then dies. Just then a 10-foot-tall creature emerges from the woods approaching Jake, so he alerts Shelley, who spins around and starts shooting, but she sees nothing as the creature disappears. Jake is now required to visit psychologist Dr. Golan to talk about his grandfather's passing since they were so close. He tells her it was no accident, but the coroner ruled it such, saying that Abe had a heart attack and it was dogs that ate his eyes. Jake thinks back on his childhood spent with his grandfather, who would recount tales about monsters and other oddities from his home country of Poland. He would also tell Jake about a home for children with strange abilities run by a Miss Peregrine. Jake's father Franklin never had the best relationship with Abe and would call his stories lies, saying that the monsters he fled Poland from weren't of the tentacle sort but the German. Because he would leave the family for long periods of time, they thought he was having an affair. During a wake, Jake's aunt gives him a book belonging to his late grandfather containing a postcard from Miss Peregrine, welcoming him to return and giving an island address of Cairnholm, Wales. Wanting to visit, Jake convinces his parents to allow him to go there and see Miss Peregrine, with the encouragement of Dr. Golan in hopes that it will help move on from the magical stories. Jake travels with his birdwatching father via ferry to the island, where they spot a peregrine falcon flying up above them.
Wow.
One of Abe's stories was that the headmistress can turn into a bird, and Jake jokes that it must be Miss Peregrine herself. Upon arriving at the island, Jake and Franklin visit an old pub called the Priest's Hole to rent a room for the night. With Franklin wanting to go birdwatching on the beach and Jake wanting to visit the school, Dad pays two local boys to take Jake to the other side of the island while he goes to the beach. Worm and MC Dirty D, formerly MC Dirty Business, claim to be the sickest rappers in Wales and direct Jake into the forest. Jake breaks through the shrubs to find that the home has long since been destroyed. He returns to the pub disappointed and hears from an old man Augie that a German bomb dropped on the building during the war, and Jake goes to sleep believing Miss Peregrine and the children to be long dead. The next day Jake convinces Franklin to let him play with the other kids, but goes back to the home to look around. He comes across some children and gets spooked, running away but tripping and knocking himself unconscious. Jake comes back around to find himself being carried by a little girl possessing incredible strength. She dumps Jake out front of a cave where he meets the children that Abe told him about. A girl named Olive and the strong girl Bronwyn. The one who seems to be leading the group named Emma, along with two creepy little twins, and an invisible boy named Millard. The children guide Jake through a cave to what they call the loop, but the kids give him the creeps, so he runs away. Jake runs all the way back to the pub to find Franklin, but finds it filled with customers, and the man claiming to be the manager doesn't let him to his room. He starts to threaten Jake, suspecting him of being a spy, when glasses begin smashing around the room unprovoked. The peculiar children arrive to rescue Jake, and Olive sets the building on fire on her way out with her pyromancy abilities. Emma tells him that he is stuck in September 3, 1943 during the World War II raids, moments before a bomb would drop on the house and kill everyone. With a naked Millard having been the one to smash the bar, Jake is brought to the now restored house to meet Miss Peregrine herself. She says that she has already had to kill the bar owner twice this month, then proceeds to introduce Jake to the rest of the children, starting with a depressed boy named Enoch, and a girl named Fiona who controls plants and grows a massive carrot for tonight's dinner, which is then dragged back to the kitchen by Bronwyn. Miss Peregrine explains to Jake that they live in a time loop, which keeps them trapped from the outside world but allows them to live in peace, saying that she sets the clock back 24 hours every day with her powers. Jake meets a girl named Claire, and a boy named Hugh who has bees living inside him, as well as a posh boy with prophetic dreams who introduces himself as Horace. Miss Peregrine goes to speak with the police at the front while Jake helps Emma with her chores. Emma can manipulate air and wears lead shoes to keep her from floating away. She had feelings for Abe years ago, but he left them and Emma hasn't gotten over it. Jake is then properly introduced to Enoch, who is jealous because he likes Emma and can see that Jake does too. Enoch shows off this talent by bringing back the dead for a short period of time, using it to have fun by making reanimated amalgamations with tiny hearts fight each other to the death. At dinner, Claire is shown to feed through a mouth in the back of her head, and they discuss the reason for Abe leaving them as being to help fight in the war. Afterwards they all sit around for movie night, where Horace projects his dreams to show a woman being wheeled away by villainous men, as well as Jake and Emma looking like they're about to kiss. Before they do, Miss Peregrine cuts the peep show short and brings the children outside to show Jake how the loop works. She plays some classical music and the kids all put on gas masks, timing it so that as German planes fly overhead and drop a bomb, she resets the clock to 24 hours earlier just before it hits. Time freezes around them for a moment, then rewinds and sends them back to September 2nd. Emma takes Jake into the cave to show him the way home, and explains that the children can't live outside the loop or else their years will catch up to them and it won't be pretty, when suddenly a bird flies into the cave and hits the wall. Emma says it's the lady from Horace's dream who is a shapeshifter called an Imbrine like Miss Peregrine, and takes it home to recover while Jake returns to his dad. While walking back to the pub, a local farmer accuses the Americans of foul play, having had all his sheep killed mysteriously. Before bed, Jake finds a letter that Ava wrote to Miss Peregrine warning her about someone named Mr. Barron, and to warn Miss Avocet to create a new loop immediately, as her home for peculiars has been discovered. The next morning, Franklin takes Jake down to the beach where they meet an ornithologist taking photos for a book he's writing. But the size of his camera makes Franklin feel inadequate with his own setup, so he decides to spend the day at the pub. Jake uses this time to sneak back out and return to the home to question Miss Peregrine about the letters and Mr. Barron, but she avoids giving answers and continues treating Miss Avocet. With all the children refusing to tell Jake anything as to not scare him away, Jake runs into Enoch and Olive and convinces Enoch to introduce him to someone named Victor. Being that he is dead, Enoch reanimates him like a puppet to freak Jake out, revealing that his eyes are missing just like Abe's. Jake brings up white eyes to Emma, so she decides to take him to talk at her secret hideout. She rows out to sea and jumps overboard, using her shoes to pull her down to a sunken ship beneath the ocean. Blowing Jake an air bubble to breathe on the way down, she then blows the water out of an entire room on the ship so the two can walk around. Emma shows photos of evil white-eyed peculiars, which Jake points out Barron as being the man outside Abe's the night he died. She tells him that he must be a peculiar to be able to cross the loop, and takes Jake to prove it. She shows him Miss Peregrine with her crossbow walk out to a spot behind the house with a chalk outline of a creature. An eyeless monster like the one he saw in the woods emerges from the cliff, but Miss Peregrine puts it down with an arrow. Emma says that Abe's peculiarity was being able to see these monsters and that it has passed on to Jake. Later on, Miss Peregrine takes out her book to explain to Jake the whole story, saying that Barron and the others like him performed an experiment on an Imbrine, but it backfired, turning them all into hideous monsters called hollows. The Baron found that by consuming the eyes of other peculiars they could return to their human forms, having consumed both Abe's and Victor's. They are called into a room where Miss Avocet has taken back to her human self, and Jake asks if the Hallows kill things other than peculiars, mentioning the dead sheep from earlier. Fearing that Barron has arrived for the children, Miss Peregrine decides it is time to leave and find a new home to start a loop.
That's our house.
Emma asks Jake to stay as he is the only one who can see the creatures, but he leaves nonetheless. He returns to find Franklin worried sick as a body has turned up. Augie lies dead on the rocks, having been thrown from a cliff after his eyes were removed. Jake runs away from the crowd to try and get back to warn Miss Peregrine, but is followed into the cave by the ornithologist. He takes the form of Dr. Golan, revealing himself to have been following Jake all along, then turns into Barron, having the peculiar power of shape-shifting into anyone he wants. Barron holds Jake at handpoint and forces him to take him to the home, where Miss Peregrine answers the door and tells the children to go to the parlor for safety. Barron wants to cage the Imbrine to attempt their failed experiment again, but is waiting for more hollows to arrive in the meantime to eat some eyeballs. With Jake being the only one able to see them, Miss Peregrine asks him to look after the children should anything happen to her. He agrees, and she turns into her bird form so that Barron may cage her. When they leave, Jake and Miss Avocet help keep the children safe and they begin to barricade the home. Jake answers the phone to hear a call from Abe in 1943, where he takes the time to confuse him by saying that he was the best grandpa in the world. With everyone arming up with Miss Peregrine's weapons and garden tools, Miss Avocet begins a speech on what to do when she is instantly ripped through a wall by a hollow and killed. It grabs Enoch, but before it can take his eyes, Jake strikes it with Miss Peregrine's crossbow. Then they all flee to the attic with the children. They escape onto the roof in the pouring rain, and Fiona makes a tree branch grow for them to escape. Jake is still on the roof with the creature when the German plane drops the bomb on the house, but Emma takes her shoes off and floats down to the ground with him as the hollow and the house are both destroyed. With the loop closing for good and the children never able to return home, they work together to find a way to save their mother. Emma drains the sunken ship so that it can float to the surface, and Olive gets the furnaces burning, becoming a working vessel once again. They begin to head to Blackpool, where Barron has gone to another known loop. And since this loop was created just before Jake's present day, if they kill Baron there, they may be able to prevent Abe's death from happening. Arriving at their location, they find that the loop is inside a haunted house at an amusement park, where the Hollows are all set to perform their experiment. Jake and Emma lure 2 evil peculiars outside and 4 Hollows still waiting to be fed, and they chase them back to the pier. 1 evil peculiar is hit by a tram, and the Hollows are all made visible by the children throwing snowballs and cotton candy. Enoch brings some skeletons to life from inside the haunted house, which go after the creatures. They begin to overwhelm them and eventually slay them, but the last Hollow destroys all of Enoch's subjects. But Bronwyn grabs a unicorn from the merry-go-round and pushes it through the final Hollow, launching it into the sea. They all band together and fight Baron and his 2 Hollow friends, with one of the evil peculiars having a monkey lower half. She throws knives but is eventually bitten by Claire, then turned to stone by the twins when they remove their masks and look at her. The other freezes Bronwyn under a pool of water, but Fiona throws seeds at him that sprout vines and constrict him. Before Olive can free Bronwyn, the Hollow comes back and starts to freeze her, so Enoch brings a giant elephant puppet to life and uses it to crush it. It looks like Olive is dead, so Enoch apologizes for being such a dick this whole time, but she revives and is happy to hear it. Emma attempts to hold off the Baron while Jake frees the Embreens, but she eventually runs out of breath. Jake manages to release them before Baron can make it to him, so he takes on Jake's form to trick Enoch and Emma. Jake proves it's him when he points out the last Hollow walking in behind Baron. It picks him up as he tries to convince the Hollow who he really is, but it plucks out his eyes and kills him. So the real Jake uses the crossbow to put it down. Having succeeded in their mission, the children then say their goodbyes to Jake and leave through the haunted house, departing to their loop and never being able to see him again. Back in Florida, Jake goes by Abe's house and sees that he's still alive, having killed Baron before his murder. He tells Abe all about his time with Miss Peregrine and Emma, when Abe gives Jake a lot of money, saying that it's for his travels and to go to her. Not knowing exactly where they are, Jake spends the next 2 months traveling through loops to different cities over different years and even joining the Navy, eventually finding the right one to get him back to the ship before they can depart. Before he can explain any more, Emma kisses him, and Miss Peregrine flies overhead and takes rest on a tower watching over them. And the movie ends. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more.